Welcome back, viewers. Our focus remains on tracking the crucial development along the site of the G7 summit that has captured the global attention. Now, in a major breakthrough, reached amidst Prime Minister Narendra Modi's visit to Canada for the G7 summit, India and Canada have agreed to designate the new High Commissioners for the first time since the year 2023. Now, the huge step towards normalizing the ties comes after Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney invited Prime Minister Narendra Modi to Canada for the summit after ties between the two nations had degraded under former Prime Minister Justin Trudeau's leadership. And Canada is accusing India of orchestrating the killing of Khalistani terrorist Hardeep Singh Nijjar. Now, a statement has been issued by the office of the Canadian Prime Minister saying that the two leaders have reaffirmed the importance of India-Canada ties based on mutual respect, rule of law, and a commitment to the principle of sovereignty and territorial integrity. Now, as the two met on the sidelines of the G summit, while Prime Minister Narendra Modi has also hailed the productive visit, also emphasizing on the part of the productive, with Prime Minister also saying that his Canadian counterpart agreeing to take calibrated steps to restore the stability to the relationship as they decided to restore high commissioners to each other's capitals at the earliest. Well, that is something that has come as an outcome of this very crucial bilateral relationship. Well, there were a host of issues, but in fact, the issue of the transnational security remains to be on the top. Joining me live on the broadcast on that is my guest, Shruti Dasgupta, who's a foreign affairs expert. Appreciate you joining, Ms. Gupta. Thank you very much for being with us on this telecast this morning. As we're also tracking the nerve of the crucial developments on the G7 summit, and the 7-nation bloc taking place and the meetings that are happening. The major development that has happened is the reinstatement of the high commissioners as far as Canada and India ties are concerned. But in the view of the trade wars that has been ignited ever since Donald Trump has been reinstated as the US president, how do you view the relations between India and Canada now going forward with its own set of challenges, as in the view of the trade wars that has been on the issue, has been on the platform as an issue? Ms. Gupta.
Good morning, Simran. Thank you for having me on your show. The trade relations were put to a big halt since the Trudeau problem occurred for India. And his appeasement led to not just stopping of all diplomatic endeavors that were happening between the two nations, also stopped trade. So this led to a loss of both the nations. It was a decent trade agreement. We had, I think, about 600 something million in trade with Canada, which was put to a halt. So this will kind of come forth again, I think, with the High Commissioners being High Commissioners being reinstated there, as well as the trade-off between US and Canada coming to a somewhat start. I believe they have signed something yesterday, but although not on all issues. India is very, very crucial to most of the nations in the European side, and especially the G7 nations, because it's a major manufacturing hub. It is a major market as well. And India is very firm on securing the IMEC, the India Middle East Economic Corridor. And Prime Minister Modi's visit to the G Summit it's a 5-day tour. It's a part of a 5-day tour where he stopped at Cyprus, and today he'll be going to your Croatia. So these two nations are part of the IMEC route that India plans to take. So on and all, we are trying to show them that we have our plans in place. And in case the diplomatic relations resume, at least if not completely, even 50% of what it was, trade would be beneficial for Canada itself, which might in turn reduce the inflation and unemployment, business opportunities, and other things that have been plaguing Canada ever since the diplomatic fallout with India. So that's where I stand on this.
Well, Ms. Dasgupta, in fact, very rightly pointed out, and in the view of these statements that you are making at this point of time, I understand that India's position also remains to be very crucial. And when we talk about our neighbors, China is also very crucially observing how India reacts and how India behaves, as we have learned it from the past, how China has made the comments of the visit earlier by Prime Minister Narendra Modi. As far as always, there is a global importance on the trade and tariffs is concerned. But I want to put the focus back a bit on the Khalistani issue, as there have been much clamor over the rhetoric by the extremists in Canada wanting to plot the ambush while the visit of Prime Minister Narendra Modi to Canada as well. And in the view of countering these challenges, there is also a very looming challenge for India to counter the threat of the Khalistani terrorism within the own nation. And at this point of time, when relations with Canada are becoming of a new series of with more support, how do you think India is also going to look forward with the resolve to countering the challenges of Khalistani extremists back home as well?
So Khalistani problem in Canada is something that they have encouraged, and it has mushroomed into a giant that they are no longer able to control, because they have the political body of the Khalistani extremism, that is the NDP. And it is supported by the World Sikh Organization, which in turn gets its inputs, fundings, and from a lot of Pakistani and Pakistani nationals. So World Sikh Organization also supports the SFJ, the Sikhs for Justice, which is Gurpatwant Singh Panun's organization based in US. So all these three together form the Khalistani nexus, which is now plaguing the West. And that problem we've, I think, exported completely to the West. They are no longer our issue. They make a lot of noise. They make problems for them. We have to understand that the West needs us just as much as India needs the West, probably a bit more, because we happen to be in a position of power. We are doing well for ourselves. Our GDP percentage is more than the combined GDP percentage of all the G7 nations. So we are in a position of power, and Khalistanis is a problem that the Western nations are now facing. On the Indian front, if you take a look at it, we do have certain elements that are encouraging it, but these are fringe elements. We have been able to dismantle the head of the Hydra, that was Amritpal Singh. We put him under lock and key, and he continues to be there while we try to get him to cooperate and understand and reveal his inner workings of the organization that he was trying to set up here. But we do have certain elements that are associated with religious organizations, and they are creating a little bit of a trouble. But for us, the major problem is the pushback that we face from the Khalistani side. If I go back to Canada, about 3 days ago, the NDP leaders were making big statements. They held press conferences where they said that somebody associated with the Indian embassy was putting a surveillance on Jagmeet Singh of the NDP. And they had also published a propaganda piece on it in one media. Nobody else followed up on it. And that propaganda piece, along with their speeches, were filled with these beautiful words that they like to use: credible allegations, credible sources, and all of that. But none of it is proven fact. None of it is something that is coming with evidences and showing that, yes, India is interfering or India is causing problems for Canadian citizens there. So NDP continues to present India as this giant enemy of Canadian citizens and Canadian sovereignty. But the facts of it is they lack evidence. And from what I understand, they also support a lot of gang members that happen to run fentanyl across the borders into US. So that particular angle comes into play. And here is where the China angle comes in. The fentanyl is completely controlled. They don't manufacture it, but they kind of give you the raw materials to just kind of do the last bit. That comes from China. And this is the kind of nexus that Kash Patel had also referred to in his recent statements, that India has helped USA in trying to dismantle the networks from the Myanmar side that is coming through China. But this nexus also spreads right across to the Khalistani elements that are working in USA, in Canada, and ensuring that the West is plagued by this entire drug issue. And these drug lords and these drug gangs are the ones that are, they have internal fights, and India gets blamed for their deaths and other encounters. So this is a problem that is worldwide. And until and unless the Canadian leadership is ready to face it and acknowledge that maybe it's not India, maybe it's the people that we've given shelter to that are the problem, we are going to continue to face a lot of back and forth in terms of rhetoric.
Ms. Dasgupta, that continues to be a challenge, and thank you very much. While I appreciate your in detail comments, and I'll also request your patience to be with us on the telecast. At the very same time, I have my other guest joining me live on the broadcast, Major General Sudhakarji, joining me live on the telecast. Thank you very much, sir, for being with us. And as we are following up on the crucial takeaways of what happened in Canada as far as the India-Canada ties reset is concerned, the group of the 7th summit began. The world leaders scrambled to contain the escalating conflict between Israel and Iran over Tehran's nuclear program. Now, with US President Donald Trump also reiterating his call for the two nations to start negotiating, he has met with Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney and also stressed that it was a mistake to remove Russia from the organization in the 2014, and doing so had destabilized the world. Well, I'll leave it up there, and Major General Sudhakar Ji is joining me on that with more, in fact, and to understand what the statement entails to. Mr. Sudhakar Ji, in fact, joins me live on the broadcast. How do you look at the statement given by Donald Trump? And this is coming at the time when geopolitical tensions are on the rise. And looking at the G7 outcomes and the takeaways, the statement is also going to have an all-round impact on the 7-nation bloc and how the trade and tariff policies go ahead.
Good morning, Simran. Thank you for getting me to your show after a long gap, and compliments to you, the way you carry yourself and conduct in the anchorage. As regards the question which you have asked, I happened to be there in the Western Hemisphere, just back to India a couple of days back. See, the whole world is going through a geopolitical churn. Donald Trump himself is unclear as to what he is speaking and what he should not. It's a very painful experience to see a president of a superpower articulating issues which he should not, because every word he speaks has got very serious and deep ramification. So when he says that G7 should be G9, well, why not? The geopolitical order is changing. He and his dispensation, they have also agreed that America is a declining superpower, and the bipolarity days are over. Now the multipolar world is actually emerging. If that be so, then in a polycentric world, you will keep having countries like Russia, you will have China, you will have India, Saudi Arabia, Iran. Each one is trying to project itself as either a erstwhile power or a power to reckon with in the current global order. So having said this, now the takeaways from G7 meeting, latest one, as far as Donald Trump is coming, it is taking place in the backdrop of Israel and Iran conflict. My take on the whole issue is that he's rushed back midway before the summit or the meeting could be completed back to USA. Perhaps there is some kind of a proposal or ordinance which is being tabled in the Congress to permit or give permission to the government to participate in the conflict against Iran along with Israel. I have been there in US. The domestic constituency, the pulse of the constituency is very loud and clear. The whole nation, without any exception, I suppose, barring the deep state, of course, are not inclined to have America with the boots on ground and fighting other countries' war. They want the country's dispensation, the administration, to focus on the internal turmoil which the country is passing through, consolidate and regroup itself, revive the status of a superpower, not as a declining superpower. That's why the very purpose of the mandate with which he has come back to power is on MAGA, Make America Great Again. If that is not going to happen, then perhaps the current leadership and the dispensation is showing all signs of a kind of a decline in their commitment and the performance on the ground. Last but not the least, Simran, that I would say is that as per the indications given by Mr. Donald Trump, perhaps the geopolitical order is in for a change. Perhaps Russia may be considered to be taken back into the G7. like the way in 2014 he's very categorically said that it was an error, it was a mistake. I personally feel, as a student of geopolitics, such kind of arbitrary dissociation of a group of erstwhile superpowers should be done with due thoroughness and thoughts going through. Russia is, despite all downsizing and all the sanctions, it's still a power to reckon with, and therefore it should be back there in the G7 as part of leading economies. As far as China is concerned, he's made a statement. Whether to bring back China or not, the same China happens to be there in the national security strategy.
Mr. Sudhakarji, in fact, Major General Sudhakarji, I'll request your kind patience to be with us on the broadcast, as at this point of time, I'm also learning a breaking development, and we'll get more on that in the same nuanced manner as you were putting it out, as well as we are also moving forward with Prime Minister Narendra Modi has held a 35-minute telephonic conversation with Donald Trump following the G7 summit. Listening to this statement by Foreign Secretary Vikram Misri.
साइडलाइंस पर होनी तय थी। राष्ट्रपति ट्रंप को जल्दी वापस अमेरिका लौटना पड़ा, जिसके कारण ये मुलाकात नहीं हो पाई। इसके बाद राष्ट्रपति ट्रंप के आग्रह पर आज दोनों लीडर्स की फोन पर बात हुई। बातचीत लगभग 35 मिनट चली। 22 अप्रैल को पहलगाम आतंकी हमले के बाद राष्ट्रपति ट्रंप ने फोन पर प्रधानमंत्री मोदी को शोक संवेदना प्रकट की थी और आतंक के खिलाफ समर्थन व्यक्त किया था। उसके बाद दोनों लीडर्स की ये पहली बातचीत थी। इसलिए प्रधानमंत्री मोदी ने राष्ट्रपति ट्रंप से ऑपरेशन सिंदूर के बारे में विस्तार से बात की। प्रधानमंत्री मोदी ने राष्ट्रपति ट्रंप को स्पष्ट रूप से कहा कि 22 अप्रैल के बाद भारत ने आतंकवाद के खिलाफ कार्रवाई करने का अपना दृढ़ संकल्प पूरी दुनिया को बता दिया था। प्रधानमंत्री मोदी ने कहा कि 6-7 मई की रात को भारत ने पाकिस्तान और पाकिस्तान ऑक्यूपाइड कश्मीर में सिर्फ आतंकी ठिकानों को ही निशाना बनाया था। भारत के एक्शन बहुत ही मेजर्ड, प्रिसाइज और नॉन एस्केलेटरी थे। साथ ही भारत ने यह भी स्पष्ट कर दिया था कि पाकिस्तान की गोली का जवाब भारत गोले से देगा। 9 मई की रात को उपराष्ट्रपति वैंस ने प्रधानमंत्री मोदी को फोन किया था। उपराष्ट्रपति वैंस ने कहा था कि पाकिस्तान भारत पर बड़ा हमला कर सकता है। प्रधानमंत्री मोदी ने उन्हें साफ शब्दों में बताया था कि यदि ऐसा होता है तो भारत पाकिस्तान को उससे भी बड़ा जवाब देगा। 9-10 मई की रात को पाकिस्तान के हमले का भारत ने बहुत सशक्त जवाब दिया और पाकिस्तान की सेना को बहुत नुकसान पहुंचाया। उसके मिलिट्री एयर बेसिस को इनऑपरेबल बना दिया। भारत के मुंहतोड़ जवाब के कारण पाकिस्तान को भारत से सैन्य कार्रवाई रोकने का आग्रह करना पड़ा। प्रधानमंत्री मोदी ने राष्ट्रपति ट्रंप को स्पष्ट रूप से कहा कि इस पूरे घटनाक्रम के दौरान कभी भी किसी भी स्तर पर भारत अमेरिका ट्रेड डील या अमेरिका द्वारा भारत और पाकिस्तान के बीच मध्यस्थता जैसे विषयों पर बात नहीं हुई थी। सैन्य कार्रवाई रोकने की बात सीधे भारत और पाकिस्तान के बीच दोनों सेनाओं की एग्जिस्टिंग चैनल्स के माध्यम से हुई थी और पाकिस्तान के ही आग्रह पर हुई थी। प्रधानमंत्री मोदी ने जोर देकर कहा कि भारत ने न तो कभी मध्यस्थता स्वीकार की थी, न करता है और न ही कभी करेगा। इस विषय पर भारत में पूर्ण रूप से राजनीतिक एकमत है। राष्ट्रपति ट्रंप ने प्रधानमंत्री द्वारा विस्तार में बताई गई बातों को समझा और आतंकवाद के खिलाफ भारत की लड़ाई के प्रति समर्थन व्यक्त किया। प्रधानमंत्री मोदी ने यह भी कहा कि भारत अब आतंकवाद को प्रॉक्सी वॉर नहीं, युद्ध के रूप में ही देखता है और भारत का ऑपरेशन सिंदूर अभी भी जारी है। राष्ट्रपति ट्रंप ने प्रधानमंत्री मोदी से पूछा कि क्या वे कनाडा से वापसी में अमेरिका रुक कर जा सकते हैं। पूर्व निर्धारित कार्यक्रमों के कारण प्रधानमंत्री मोदी ने अपनी असमर्थता व्यक्त की। दोनों लीडर्स ने तब तय किया कि वे निकट भविष्य में मिलने का प्रयास करेंगे। राष्ट्रपति ट्रंप और प्रधानमंत्री मोदी ने इजराइल ईरान के बीच चल रहे संघर्ष पर भी चर्चा की। रूस यूक्रेन कॉन्फ्लिक्ट पर दोनों ने सहमति जताई कि जल्द से जल्द शांति के लिए दोनों पक्षों में सीधी बातचीत आवश्यक है और इसके लिए प्रयास करते रहना चाहिए। इंडो पैसिफिक क्षेत्र के संबंध में दोनों नेताओं ने अपने परिप्रेक्ष्य साझा किए और इस क्षेत्र में क्वाड की अहम भूमिका के प्रति समर्थन जताया। क्वाड की अगली बैठक के लिए प्रधानमंत्री मोदी ने राष्ट्रपति ट्रंप को भारत यात्रा का निमंत्रण दिया। राष्ट्रपति ट्रंप ने निमंत्रण स्वीकार। G7 समिट की साइडलाइंस पर होनी तय थी। राष्ट्रपति ट्रंप को जल्दी वापस अमेरिका लौटना पड़ा, जिसके कारण ये मुलाकात नहीं हो पाई। इसके बाद राष्ट्रपति ट्रंप के आग्रह पर आज दोनों लीडर्स की फोन पर बात हुई। बातचीत लगभग 35 मिनट चली। 22 अप्रैल को पहलगाम आतंकी हमले के बाद राष्ट्रपति ट्रंप ने फोन पर प्रधानमंत्री मोदी को शोक संवेदना प्रकट की थी और आतंक के खिलाफ समर्थन व्यक्त किया था। उसके बाद दोनों लीडर्स की ये पहली बातचीत थी। इसलिए प्रधानमंत्री मोदी ने राष्ट्रपति ट्रंप से ऑपरेशन सिंदूर के बारे में विस्तार से बात की। प्रधानमंत्री मोदी ने राष्ट्रपति ट्रंप को स्पष्ट रूप से कहा कि 22 अप्रैल के बाद भारत ने आतंकवाद के खिलाफ कार्रवाई करने का
All right. In fact, now major breaking development coming in. Prime Minister Narendra Modi has held a 35-minute telephonic conversation with the US President Donald Trump following the G7 summit, where he saw his early exit. He has made it abundantly clear that India never allowed a mediator following India's fight against terrorism with Operation Sindoor. That's a big breaking development that we are learning, viewers. In fact, ever since the ceasefire was announced, all the focus was also on the US's intervention into making that happen, as the United States President Donald Trump had issued earlier statements in that regard. But right now, in fact, as the G7 summit has been concluded, and right now, while the statement is concerned from Foreign Secretary Vikram Misri, what we are learning is that two big things: 35-minute Trump and Modi call has taken place, and it has been made clear that India has not allowed any mediation so far as dealing with the terrorist attacks and the retaliations and offensives from Pakistan is concerned. While it was also made very clear that Operation Sindoor is also currently in force. All right, I'll pick it up from where I left. Major General Sudhakarji continues to be with us. While Major General Sudhakarji, we were talking about how US's role with the entire geopolitical tensions pertain to, and we have got a bigger, in fact, platform to focus as far as India-US relations were also being spoken of. And here we have made it very clear on the platform to the world after G7 that India has never allowed the intervention of a foreign party for the retaliations as far as Pakistan's attack is concerned. In a conversation that has happened with Donald Trump of Prime Minister Narendra Modi, we have reiterated and made it abundantly clear that Operation Sindoor is in force currently. How do you look at India's resolve and specific timely response to how India has maintained its stand as far as US's intervention into the ceasefire after the Operation Sindoor is concerned?
See, Simran, very relevant question you have raised. I am just back from a couple of countries, if not more, and there is a grudging acceptance of India's supremacy in the military capability that has been demonstrated during Operation Sindoor. Outwardly, nobody is acknowledging, nobody is speaking anything because of only one handicap that India had gone through. Our information warfare or strategic communication was found deficient. And more so when I interacted with the Indian diaspora in different parts of USA and a couple of countries in Middle East and Europe, many of them, they actually They were ignorant about what was happening. And much of the fanfare was from the Pakistan side, giving misleading information, disinformation, misinformation, malinformation. As a result, the true storyline got hijacked. So therefore, there is a lesson for us. We as a country have to evolve that in 21st century, any such kind of conflict, regardless whether it is non-escalatory or restrained or calibrated or whatever it may be from our side, the way it is put across by Pakistan disinformation campaign is that India was a defeated nation. They have won the victory. Like the way they keep saying 1947-48, they actually were victorious. They defeated India. In 65 operation, they defeated India. In 71 also, despite we gave them 93,000 prisoners of war on a platter without taking anything, negotiating anything in our favor, they still maintain that they defeated India. Kargil operation, every time they have been defeating India. So it's less said the better. The fact of the matter is that I'm glad and very proud that the Honorable Prime Minister has articulated in a very lucid and crystallized form and told the leadership of USA that India and Pakistan problems are a bilateral problem. We have neither accepted any mediation in the past, nor will we accept now, nor in the future. It's a very good statement made by the Prime Minister. I would go a step ahead, Simran, that anything that happens in international affairs, it must be, communications must be duplicated or triplicated. One is telephonic call. The second is something in writing must go from India. Call it as a rebuttal, call it as a protest note, or call it as a démarche or whatever to USA. These loose statements are not acceptable as we as a country to 1.45 billion population. So it must go in writing. And third and most important thing, there has to be a legal document. Such loose statements by the president of or USA or superpower, which we as a country are sensitive to, it should not happen in future. Enough is enough. And Jammu and Kashmir never existed. That problem never existed 1,000 years back. Not the Bangladesh was 1,500 years back. They have come into existence after 1947 and after the partition. Therefore, the leadership world over, particularly the superpower USA, would do well if they introspect and enhance their awareness level. It will do them good so that such loose statements which contribute to erosion of their status and credibility are actually prevented in future. And India and USA, we continue to march ahead in a progressive and forward-looking, positive roadmap of growth and prosperity. That is all I have to say at the moment, Simran. Back to you.
Well, absolutely. In fact, this is a detail that we are able to understand so far as these developments take place. Well, all right. In fact, on that note, thank you very much, Major General Sudhakar ji, for being with us on the broadcast, and appreciate your detailed and in-depth analysis and the comments of these developments and putting this in perspective. I also have Shruti Dasgupta with me live on the broadcast, and if we spoke about this 35-minute conversation that largely focused on Donald Trump's condolences over the operation, in fact the terrorist attack, and how India did lead the Operation Sindoor and has given a big message on terrorism to the entire world. Ms. Dasgupta, over the past 4 years, Quad in fact also has strengthened, and Quad has also been a huge focus of this conversation, the telephonic conversation with Donald Trump, and Quad leaders have met 6 times, including twice virtually. The foreign ministers have met 8 times. That's a good number, progressive one. The United States is going to host the 2025 Quad Foreign Ministers meeting, and India is going to host the 2025 Quad Leaders Summit. So how do you view this important conversation now working ahead of what happens to be setting as a precedent for Quad as well?
Simran, I'd like to say that my first takeaway from this conversation was the very first sentence that our foreign minister said, that it was at the insistence of Donald Trump. So we are trying to take control of the narrative game that we had lost earlier. And we're trying to tell that, again, this conversation was sought by Donald Trump because he wants to make things clear. But I don't know about Quad, but I think US is sending really sad, bad messagings across. They have Field Marshal Asim Munir sitting for lunch today, a private lunch not open to the press with Donald Trump. So there's a lot of mixed, weird messaging coming from the USA, and I'm not really happy of what Trump is trying to cook and his administration is trying to cook there. What I understand is that he probably doesn't have good advisors sitting with him. So it doesn't matter what we name it, whether we want to call it G7 or Quad or Indo-Pacific safety or security or any of that, until and unless Trump and his administration is ready to hold Pakistan as a terror sponsoring state accountable for its actions, I don't think any of these organizations are going to have any impact. One of the statements that has come out of G7 of our Prime Minister Modi is that you issue all kinds of sanctions when it is on terrorist states, when it is to your convenience, but you still go ahead and promote states that sponsor terrorism. This was an indirect, without naming anybody, indirect indication that USA is now supporting terror sponsoring countries like Pakistan and is holding them in their hands, doing crypto deals with them, which is a very major security problem. No matter what kind of a Quad you form or BRICS you form or G7 or G20, if you have a cryptocurrency with a nation whose terrorists stand with their local politicians and leaders and are making genocidal calls against India, then how do you turn around and say that we're looking for regional, stability and security? It is so these statements are very counterproductive to the world as such, and I think the foreign ministry was very right in putting out the statement out today before the Trump administration could, or at least that we could hear of, because we would be stuck again in a who said who and who said what and when kind of a loop. They have made it very clear that it was a conversation sought by President Trump. And despite whatever we feel or we understand, the security of the region does play a big role because we have China on one side.
Ms. Dasgupta, thank you very much for being with us. I appreciate your detailed comments and putting this in perspective for our viewers as well. Now, let's move forward with more updates. US President Donald Trump is scheduled to meet with Pakistan's Chief of Army Staff General Asim Munir over the lunch on the 18th of June. The meeting has been confirmed by a White House itinerary of the President for June 18th. This has come after the White House had denied the reports that it had invited Munir to the celebration parade of the US military. Munir, who's in a 5-day visit to the United States, faced large-scale protest by Pakistani diaspora there. The meeting of the two also come amidst the Trump's tirade against Iran, while Pakistan has remained one of Iran's strongest backers, with Munir stating in a speech in Washington itself that his country stood with Iran and hoped for an end to the conflict soon. Aditya Vadawan is joining me with more updates at this point of time. Now, the meeting between Donald Trump and Asif Munir is going to take place, and one can't in fact help but also look at the fact of the statement that was earlier issued by Donald Trump, the US President, that he had not invited Asif Munir to the United States, but he in fact has been in the States for 5 days, and this is what we are picking up ahead of the meeting that will happen and take place on lunch. Aditya, what more are you picking up? Aditya joins me live on the broadcast, viewers. In fact, Aditya, as this crucial development takes place, what more can you add up ahead of the meeting between Donald Trump and Asif Munir?
Well, absolutely. I mean, if you see, Asim Munir, the general of the Pakistani army, has been invited by the Trump administration, and it is expected that both the leaders, Asim Munir and US President Donald Trump, will have a private lunch. And as per the reports, there could be discussions regarding this escalation of the Iran and Israel conflict, and it needs to be seen when Asim Munir and Donald Trump meet, what further talks will be held. Yes, Simran.
All right, Aditya, thank you very much with the latest inputs. And what we're tracking next is also crucial developments. But before that, it's time for a short break. After that, stay tuned.